Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at my Sega Dreamcast Kiosk. Now, I've seen a few other YouTube videos on kiosks for the Sega Dreamcast before, but they haven't been very technical, so I wanted to go into how the thing is constructed, how the thing works, and how they usually age over time. So first, the monitors in these tend to blow almost universally. The reason is because there is a small Samsung TV that's put inside these, originally in '99 when the Dreamcast launched, and it is so compact that they tend to overheat and stop working. So what I do is I got a nice little Dell monitor in there that works great, and then I've hooked it up with VGA, and that works wonderfully. In fact, if you look over the dip, you can see the little Dell logos, and then I usually just push the on button over there when I want to turn the monitor on. Additionally, this piece right here is removable, and normally there would be two hinges that hold that on, but one of my hinges is actually snapped off, and that's another common problem that happens with the Dreamcast kiosks. As you can see, that's just a thin piece of plastic holding that hinge on, and then over here that piece has snapped off. So that's another really common issue that happens with these kiosks. I just happen to have some old Genesis boxes holding up the monitor inside. The only piece that I don't have would be a clear plastic piece that would fit right here and then, prevent people from physically taking the Dreamcast and stuff like that. Since, this isn't in a store 24 hours in public, I don't mind missing that piece. And then there's also a key that you would use to open that plastic piece. I have the key, but it doesn't really seem to be useful. And you can just kind of slide that back on. And I have a small piece of clear tape, just making sure it holds on a little bit more firmly. The next is how the controllers go into the unit. So one of the things I think is really cool is that the holders for the controller are actually designed to house them really well. So there are two screw holes right here through the metal that line up perfectly with the Dreamcast controller. So you actually just use the screws that the controller comes with and then screw that onto the housing, and that works really well. And then this wire feeds into this little appendage that comes out of the kiosk and then feeds inside, actually housed underneath the Dreamcast in a really nice way. So if we take the unit out, we can see that all the wires are housed underneath the system, which works really well. It's really convenient. Moving on to the dimensions. The dimensions for it are about 4.5 feet tall, and then it's about 2 feet wide, and then another 1.5 feet in depth. So as far as kiosks go, this one's actually pretty compact. I can fit it in my apartment very well. Another thing is that the original one did not come with a separate speaker system. It just used that Samsung TV that was housed inside of the kiosk. So I'll post a picture in the video of the television from another kiosk owner. Now, moving on to the back of the unit, the only separate detachable piece that there is this back housing right here. And it's got these big housing marks for fans. Now, the fans that are inside the Dreamcast are actually not used to cool the system itself, because the fans are here and the Dreamcast is all the way down there. That wouldn't really help with circulation. So what they were actually used for is to cool the TV that was inside of the Dreamcast. So this is what the back of the unit looks like. I just have it wired in a shimmy way just for demonstration purposes. Right? And then we'll take a look at the side. Alright, so let's take the back housing off. Now, I didn't want to do anything permanent to this kiosk, so when I took the original television out that was blown, I just put a Dell monitor in there and then found I could prop it in with a pillow. So I didn't have to mount anything or do anything else to that. Now, these are the fans I was talking about, 1 and 2, and they're extremely loud, and you also plug them in separately. So each fan has its own power cord that are independent from one another. There's no on or off switch for the fans. If they're plugged in, the fans go on. If they're plugged off, they don't go on. And the fans are actually really loud, so what a lot of people would do is just unplug the fans when they were playing a game, because it was actually really hard to hear the game when the fans were going on when these units were in stores. That's probably another reason why most of the monitors in here have blown. So I'll turn on the fans. Right? And that sound will actually echo with the housing on even more so. So that'll actually sound even louder once the housing is put onto the unit. So that's the fans as well. How it was originally designed was there would be a small power strip here with 3 ports in it, one for the Dreamcast, one for the television, and then another 2 for the fan. So I guess it would be a 4-unit power strip. I'll post a picture of the original backing to the Dreamcast in here. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is that if you have one of these, one of the things that you want to make sure to do is it's probably not a good idea to use this with all the pieces connected and then there's no air circulation inside of it. Plus you get those nasty loud fans. So what you want to do is pull this little tray out a little bit and then pull your Dreamcast out just slightly to where the vent is exposed. So that way you can see that there's almost no clearance space here. So if you actually have your Dreamcast sitting inside of the kiosk, then, you know, the ventilation's terrible. It's going to eventually overheat your system. So that's another thing to be concerned about when you're using this kiosk. Again, you know, I wanted to make this video really technical about how the kiosk works and then how it was originally designed. So next, I'm going to do a brief section about how the Dreamcast kiosk model is different from the standard retail model. So 1 second. Okay, so on the right we have the kiosk model of Dreamcast unit, and on the left we have the retail model on kiosk units. Now, it's pretty impossible to tell the difference between the two just by looking at the front end of the console. So you've got to know a little bit about them to understand the differences. So most of you will probably know what the retail one looks like, so let's take a look at the differences on the kiosk. So, if you look at the fan port, you'll see that it's clear here, and then if you look at the kiosk version, you'll notice that it's got this metal housing on it. So the kiosk version, again, that's the retail, that is the kiosk, has a metal fan that spins at a little bit higher of an RPM to keep it more cool. That's because the kiosk unit is designed to be in an enclosed space, so circulation's really bad, so they up the fan quality on that. And if you look at the back of these units, you will notice that the retail version has a square circle power connector, where the kiosk version will have 2 circles. Easiest way, in my opinion, to tell is that the retail version will have the standard phone jack modem. All right. Now, since the kiosk version was pre-released before they started developing the modem, this has no modem. So it's called a dummy modem, so it's just a piece of plastic that connects to the side. So the back of it will not have a phone jack. Then, if you flip these over, and just look at the stickers on the bottom, very clearly the retail one has a larger sticker base, and the kiosk version will very clearly say kiosk. So it's the same power, same voltage, same everything There's just a few minor differences. So last thing I wanted to talk about, first, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, the entire outer housing is plastic, except for the Dreamcast sign at the bottom. That is made of metal. Other than that, just about everything else on the unit is made of plastic, with the exception of the white housing in the back. So, that'll clear that up. The last topic I wanted to cover is how many of these were there ever made and how many of them are still left. So I've been on some message boards and I've talked to some people about that. And the number that I keep coming up to is around 500. And the reason is because where most of these started out is in Hollywood Videos. If you remember them, Hollywood Video was a rental chain in North America, and they had a deal with Sega where you could rent a Dreamcast unit before launch and play Sonic Adventure and I think another demo disc, even before the thing was released. So to promote that, they had kiosk units. And there were several retailers that had these kiosks, like Funko-Land or EB Games back in the day, probably even some GameStops. But I think a fair conservative number of how many of these were shipped to North America is around 500, definitely less than 1,000. So what ended up happening is, because since the Dreamcast had such a short lifespan, is that after Sega pulled the plug, the stores just ended up with these kiosks. And what ended up happening is people took the Dreamcast units out, and then a lot of these actually just ended up in dumpsters, sadly. I've talked to several people that have had one that they said they actually pulled their Dreamcast out of the dumpster. So it's actually pretty rare to find an actual kiosk, and then what's even more rare is to find the kiosk stand with the actual kiosk Dreamcast unit, because most of these were separated from the stands when the stores decided to get rid of them or stop dealing Dreamcast. Anyway, so if you're interested in buying one of these Dreamcast kiosks units or acquiring it somehow, what would be a fair price? So I would say that if you did have a nice, complete, or almost complete unit like mine that has these normal problems with it, such as not the original monitor, this usually loses a hinge or two, but it's all there, somewhere around $500. That's what they typically sell for when they come up on the market. You can't really ship these things because of size, so you're really limited to your local market or area for finding one, which does make it very difficult. But somewhere around $500. Now, if you find one that does have the kiosk Dreamcast in it, that's a different story. That ups the value a little bit. So I would say a fair price on just the kiosk unit is around $100. There's not very many of them, they're hard to find, and they are interesting, and they do make the kiosk more complete. There's one guy on eBay right now that is trying to sell one of these kiosk units for $400, and I think that's crazy. I'll put a link down in the description below, but also remember the three differences on the kiosk unit: the power cord, the sticker, and the metal fan, and the dummy modem. His doesn't have a dummy modem, which makes me feel suspicious about it. So I don't know. Be careful when you're trying to look for these things. So other than that, I'm not sure what else I can tell you about the kiosk unit. If you have any more questions about it, please let me know. And if you have any more information that I did not cover, let me know down in the comments below. I plan on posting more videos every week, so please feel free to subscribe. Have a great day. Bye.